When it comes to launching your own poetry career, probably the biggest obstacle that we need to overcome isn't even the quality of our writing itself, it's the amount of people that we're actually able to make aware of our writing. So today we're going to be talking about reach and why it's such a challenge for poets and what can we do about it.
Yeah.
Cool. Good morning, guys. Evening, afternoon. Welcome to this episode of Arts and Offers, where we talk about the connection between poetry and art and business. My name is Jeff.
I'm Matthias.
How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, pretty good. Just
Okay.
getting you to got some new tech on hand, and so just working around that and doing what I can. How about you, man?
Yeah, it's another week back at it. We have our Monday series. We had an opening to kind of just celebrate the space. So we had some people come through, including yourself, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
But people were kind of sharing goals that they have for their art, obstacles that they're going through, trying to really get specific about what it is that they want their work to do for them and what they want to do with themselves and like their art. And I think just starting that conversation, starting that thought process of like, oh, what is the direction I'm heading in?
Yeah.
Because if we go aimless, where we're going to end up, 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
Yeah, and I really like that space as a space that kind of like challenged the ambiguity around like what you think poetry can do or mean in your life, like substantively. We had like one conversation with one of the people there, and one of the things that was like really striking. And it's funny because it reminded me of me, not a crazy long time ago, right? Where you're like, man, like I'm just happy if my poetry reaches people, and I want people to be affected by poetry, but I also want a second career in poetry. Like these are like I have stated like a place that I want to land somewhat with my poems, but I've also stated that I actually don't get. I just want poetry to
Yeah.
make people feel good. So I think it was a really good space that kind of challenges like, okay, well, hold on, what exactly is your goal? Because it's actually not both of those things. Because the version of you that wants to, still, I mean, even one of the other contributors when we're talking about, he was just like, okay, like around 60,000, right, is kind of where we want to land. Like, and like he was one of the people that was like actually in the process of thinking, kind of like about
Yeah,
what like, and he's
sixty
already in that
thousand
space.
dollars per year based on
Six
writing. Yeah.
thousand, like based on that. I'm like, that was somebody who's like, okay, but that person is not just a, well, as long as one person is affected and they love it. I'm like, that's because I think even the example that the other contributor was kind of bringing out, she was like talking about like a family member of hers just messaged her and said she liked it. I'm like, that's actually not a customer, right?
Yeah.
That's not somebody who's booking you. That's not somebody who even has purchased your work. So it's like it's really a space to kind of challenge that ambiguity, trying to get us out of that not specific space and
Mm-hmm.
actually put some hard metrics behind what our goals are. Because I mean, not only does it help us to kind of frame in that 10, 20 years down the line what we want our lives to look like, but it
Right.
also really helps us kind of square in like, what's our next step? What's the thing that's not going to be a waste of time and energy and effort? What's the thing that I can do that's going to get me incrementally closer to that goal?
And I think a lot of people just aren't honest about their goals. Like, talk about some of the examples you gave where sometimes people say their goal is, I just want, Messias, I just want one person. If one person is impacted by my art in a positive way, that's all I need.
Sounds real
Okay.
seventh heaven, real
I don't have any
sitcom.
issues with that goal. I have issues with that goal if you're not being honest about that goal. Because, all right, you perform your poem and you get that one person who says, I really resonate with it. And that's all you hear
Yeah.
forever about
Well,
that piece. Well, to me, that's not an honest goal. If they upset you, if you're like, man, no one likes my work, but it's like, oh, you got your goal.
you got
You,
your
you
goal.
said the goal was one person. You got your one person. So I just want to make sure that when we establish our goals, that we're also honest about what the goal is, and don't like being able to kind of part the emotions we may have towards it. Because sometimes I
Yeah.
think we're afraid to have the goals that we want. 'Cause sometimes we're like, I want to make a livable income off my work. I don't like that goal. I like the $60,000. Like that's something I
Yeah.
can work with. Okay, so I want to make $60,000 off my writing, and then we feel guilty. But it's like, oh, but that means like, oh, I'm greedy, or like, oh, I have these negative associations with
Mhm.
money and things like that. And how honest we're going to be with ourselves.
Yeah. It's also, and so I think it's one of those things where it's um, like if I'm talking to a group of people, like let's say like if I'm like, oh, actually, no, it's even a better example. It's like as like grown-ups, like you might be like, I know where your Christmas gifts are coming from. Like I know where your Christmas gifts are. Like I know I'm working this many hours. I know that when I get paid, during this September, like if I'm in like August, November, like September, like somewhere in there, like I'm like buying these gifts and I'm starting. I haven't been celebrating Christmas for a crazy long amount of time, so I don't know what all the rules are. But when you're communicating with your kids, like maybe you're telling them this is this whimsical land that it came from, and I think people kind of turn into that a lot of times when they're talking about their goals. They're like what they feel like these people need to hear is, oh, I'm just this like good hearted. I just really love people and I just have all this goodness bubbling up in my heart and like it needs to be on the page because you need to have it. Like that's all I'm doing it for. But really which is like again brings us back to like them being honest about their goals. It's like even that is an effort to sell somebody on this like super
Right.
altruistic person. That way they purchase what they their work. Like you know what I mean? So it's like it's kind of like it's not reverse psychology. That's the wrong like phrase, but it's like this mechanism that keeps you from actually ever really being honest about what you want because the profit motive goes along with the facade, like
Mm-hmm.
the hey, this is a person that like this person just says, oh, I just love music so much, I just live for music, I just don't want to do anything else but music, and they just so happen to have like 5 platinum records
Mm-hmm.
and 20 cars, 3 mansions, they fly, they got all the jewelry and all this other stuff. I'm like, this person is not a person who is just like, I'm just happy with singing,
Mm-hmm.
at a cafe, and I hope my work reaches somebody's heart and they're fulfilled by it. Like,
Yeah.
no, this person worked diligently to put themselves in a position where their craft was able to feed their
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle and kind of create those
Mm-hmm.
things. So just kind of creating that honesty, or at the very least, breaching that with yourself, so that now you can start admitting, like, okay,
Yeah.
this isn't just something that I'm hoping people like resonate with on some level. And like you hope that people resonate with it. That way, it leads them to like you that
Mm-hmm.
to a purchase, or they see a value in it that leads them to
Mm-hmm.
like a purchase, or leads you to somebody
Yeah.
that can make that purchase.
And to be clear, if it truly is that your goal is just to have that one person that resonates with it, and that is honestly your goal, and you get that, and you're happy, cool. This conversation is not for you. This is for the people that like are telling themselves that that's what they want, and then they get it, and they're like, that's not enough.
Yeah,
Actually, deep down,
yeah, yeah.
that's who we're really uh, referencing here. So let's talk a little bit about I think that goal about, for instance, that one writer being like, I want to make $60,000 a year around my writing. So what that basically is going to boil down to, so I need to make $5,000 a month, which means that I need to make, um, however many dollars per day. So you can reverse engineer that, but I think the biggest obstacle to achieving that is our central topic is about how many people know about the thing you're doing as you're doing it.
Yeah.
And basically, if you're trying to make like $1,000 in sales off of a book, okay, so let's say that your book costs, let's say your book costs like $10, right? So that means that you need to be selling a lot of copies of that $10 book to make,
Yeah.
$1,000, which can also tie into other things too, right? It can tie into like features and things like that. But let's imagine that like your goal is, okay, I need to make $1,000 off the book, just the book, not including everything else. So how many people do I need to get in touch with to make one purchase? Because that's kind of what it boils down to. Like it's
Yeah.
not, and I think at first it can be a very intimidating number, but then like the more you think about it, it's actually in some ways a relief because it's math. There's a formula to this.
Yeah.
Like if it's like, okay, every 20 people that I reach out to directly results in, someone getting my book. Well, then cool. Well, now it's just a numbers game because I just need to reach out to enough people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I think there's like, I saw somebody post, and like this was like somebody who like they do music, but it's like a little bit different. I mean, I don't know how different it is for like the music like musicians, but like I think he was like kind of aggravated because he was just like he in every bit of his marketing was is just through like Instagram, right? So that's all problem number one, singular dimensional. Like it's like just every like if you're on any other social media app, or if you're just generally like just out and about, like you're not really getting exposure to the marketing behind this project, right? So that's one thing. But secondary to that, he's like, I have, I think it was like something like 4,000 followers on Instagram, and because I have 4,000 followers on Instagram, like I should have more plays and more sales
Oh,
of the Instagram of the
interesting.
thing.
Okay.
And I was like, man, like as soon as I'm like this is somebody, and I used to work in like sales as well, and like at like I used to work for like and actually so, a lot of people like I work for a call center, and one of the things that is very very clear and you have to understand about like work doing sales in a call center is that like if you have a sales floor of 50 people and you get 10 sales in a day, that
Wow.
also means that y'all probably made, about 7,500 calls that day. You know what I mean? That's light. You know what I mean? You're
Mhm.
literally a lot of people are hanging up. A lot of people don't even answer. Blah blah blah. And I think that's like kind of one of the things. It's like just look at your song. Like how many people does it take to kind of reach your
Yeah.
goal? I'm like, do you think that again that even your metrics that might only work if you're dealing with like if this is your social media app, you know what I mean? But you got a whole bunch of people on Instagram. And if I'm on Instagram, I'm seeing 1,000 other things and you. So yeah, there's just
Yeah.
to say like kind of capturing people's attention, but then also like understanding like followers do not mean customers. They do not mean people that are purchasing your work.
I mean, let's just talk briefly about socials. The way socials work right now, it's not follower based, it's not subscriber based, it's interest based
For
right
sure.
now. So right now, that's why like you sign on Instagram or you sign on Facebook and stuff like that. And what you're getting shown, or TikTok or YouTube, you're not getting shown the things you're subscribed to or follow. You're getting shown. You might see a little bit of that, but you're
Yeah.
also largely getting content that, especially if you're not curating your feed and like blocking out stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get shown things that are based entirely on what the algorithm thinks you're interested in.
Yeah.
So those 4,000 followers, how many of them are actually seeing your posts every day? Especially imagine you're only doing one post a day. Like how
Mm-hmm.
many? What percent is it? You know.
Yeah.
So that number is going to be very very small. So we can't base it just off of your social media following. This is why you hear a lot of people talking about like newsletters and stuff like that. The power of a
Mm-hmm.
newsletter is the fact that one, people check their email fairly regularly. The other thing is that you send in, if you have people's email address and you send out an email, unless they like blocked you, they're gonna see it, and
Yeah.
that's the advantage. Whereas in algorithm, you post something, not everyone who's following you is gonna see what you
Mm-hmm.
do. So that's why a lot of people say you gotta start up a newsletter. You gotta start up a newsletter. That's the reasoning why. Um, Another thing too, just to talk about the numbers. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with like Alex Hormozy. Um, Regardless of how you may feel about how he does his businesses, I think he has a valuable lesson in terms of numbers because so he works with gyms and like starting gyms, and when he first started a new gym, he had a coach and his coach said, "Oh, well, make flyers." Okay, so he printed out flyers and stuck them on like car windshields and stuff like that, real old school method, right? And then after a couple weeks, he goes back to his coach, and his coach said, "Oh, how'd the flyers go?" He's like, "Oh, well, I got like a couple callbacks, and one person walked in the gym, but it didn't really do much." And his coach was like, "Well, how many flyers did you print out?" He's like, "Oh, 500." And his coach was like, 500? Like, we do like 1,000 just on like our test run. And then after the test run is done, we're doing about 10,000, a day. to make enough sales over the course of a month to sustain the business. So it's like, if for you and your reach is like, oh, I'm reaching, 100 people or even 1,000 people today, the honest answer is probably not enough to achieve the goal that you need.
Yeah, I think there's something to there's almost like a little bit of an ego. I think that comes with like kind of under promoting work, right? So it's like
You don't want to be trying too hard.
Yeah, people. Somebody, ASAP Rocky, actually, this is funny. So ASAP Rocky, there was like this interview, and he was just like, "Man, when did it become like weird or bad to try hard? Like people, like he's an artist, and he's like, I'll be working on my stuff, and I'll release something, and then I'll feel a different way about it, and then I'll rework it, and I'll try to release it again, or I'll have like like aesthetics or like design that I'm re-releasing and kind of working on and openly pushing out and openly talking about consistently. And there's a lot of people that are like, it goes back to what you think your work is doing, as opposed to even if you're the greatest artist, if you are Mozart of 2025, if you are Mozart of 2025, like how do the people know? Like like they're gonna have to find out some way. Like I know a lot of these I know a lot of artists, they have this thing where they're like, I want to just work on the craft. I'm like, that's fine. And if something that you do goes crazy viral tomorrow, then like if you only post like 6 different posts and something crazy goes viral, like more power to you. But that's like incredibly rare. The thing that's much more common is the person that is posting 10 things a day has one thing, like, and they're doing that for weeks, months, a lot of them years, and then the thing that you see is like something huge happen, but it's because they're just being consistent and they're pushing things to the audience and they're refining their audience consistently. Like they're like, okay, well, this is what my people are interested in. Let me continue to like push into that.
Or there's no viral moment, and it's just continuous slow growth.
Or that.
And that's I can speak, for my teaching channels, I've never had something go mega viral. We're at about a little shy of about 30,000 subscribers. Doing it since about 2018, 2019, and I've never had anything like go viral. It's just like, today I got 10 subscribers. Today I got 20 subscribers. Today I got 40 subscribers. Today I got 20 again. And it's never gone like, every now and then you get like it goes 100 subscriber day and things like that. But it's, by and large, it's like slow. And then that slow over 6 years gets you far. And then like, what's 6 years from now? So I think a lot of times when we're thinking about this aspect of reach, this is why it's also important to get started now, because most likely whatever work you're putting in to grow that reach is going to take a lot of time, and you're going to wish, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you had started today. Mm-hmm. And so this is something we really want to be thinking about. I don't think we can approach this from a perspective as, I do the work now and then tomorrow I'm going to see the immediate results. Especially if you're going for a purely organic strategy. When we say organic, that means I'm not paying anything. I'm just going to use, for instance, the social platforms. I'm just going to message people. I'm going to do like face-to-face stuff, word of mouth. That's called organic. If you're doing that approach, it can work. It saves money, but it takes time. Yeah. Because you're most likely not going to have that thing that just shoots you into like thousands of people all at once. It's a very much a slow building process. Mm-hmm. If you are trying to accelerate it, this is where you see things like on Facebook. If you post stuff, or Instagram, you may see like, like boost this, or like YouTube, you'll see like, like promote this and things like that, which you can do. The danger of that is, if you do want to do that strategy to grow faster, so you're willing to, pay, I would definitely try to get an actual marketer involved, because what can end up happening is you'll get a lot of people's eyes on your work, but it's not going to be the right people if you don't calibrate that audience that you're targeting specifically. And Facebook, if you've ever promoted on Facebook before or thought about it, it can go very nitty gritty. Like you can target people in this neighborhood who are in this age demographic, who have kids, who like coffee, who, and like you can like go through the specific list and it's going to show up on their feed. But if you mess up any of that data, you're going to get all the wrong people.
Yeah.
And it becomes a lot more expensive.
Yeah, especially because I think even just the action of navigating, like let's say like something like YouTube, like navigating YouTube to where it's like, like the algorithm is looking at not only if you open it up and you specifically search for something, the algorithm is clocking that. If you open it up and you specifically search for something, you watch one video and then the next video comes on, it's on for 3 seconds and then you like cut out of it, it's clocking that. Like,
I also want to mention that it also tracks, for instance, if you watch, maybe you think you're supporting your friends, so you watch the video and then put it in the background. They know that too. They know, oh, this video is in the background, it's not in the foreground. They're not really focused on
engaging
it.
with it. Yeah. So there's all kinds of those things kind of go into the algorithm where it's like somebody genuinely watching your video, like coming across your video and watching your video. Maybe they subscribe or maybe they like or maybe they comment. But, again, just the genuineness of watching it. And then maybe they're like, oh, what's going on for the rest of the channel? They go into your and they maybe watch a couple other videos. That action is much more, it's going to be much more beneficial to your growth than somebody seeing an ad for your channel or seeing an ad for your page. And then seeing and being like, oh, man, yeah, that's cool. But, like, maybe because of the metrics that you used, maybe that gets you to a couple people that would genuinely be interested in your channel. But ultimately it's like, okay, well, but the other system of somebody actually genuinely coming along it because you're doing the targeting, you know what I mean? Like you're creating content, you're creating titles, you're creating thumbnails and all those things to kind of really specifically target somebody. That'll get them there and keep them there.
It's not a strategy I've used a lot, so it's not something I could speak to much, but I can tell you basically information that I found about it. So if you are a person who is looking into boosting something, paying for it to reach more people, the first thing that just on my research seems to work best is pick a piece of content. Don't pick like your newest thing. Pick something that's already performed well on its own, because that's already kind of had a bit of a proof of concept. Yeah. Whereas like your new thing, you don't know what the reaction is going to be to it. So picking something that's already been established, it can be really helpful. It can also give it kind of a second life. The other thing I would say too is that I probably wouldn't do it to just boost a post or even necessarily like an event flyer or something like that. I think it seems to work especially well for like a specific like product or service. Because if you're like on YouTube and just promoting like a random YouTube video, it's like why okay, just a video where it's just like, oh, like here's like a course I'm launching or something like that. That seems to in general work better. Not say you can't have success with just like the videos and stuff, but I think usually you're pushing people into a direction. People don't want to just like imagine you're the viewer. You don't just want to be pushed like, oh, watch this random video for someone I don't know. Usually there's like at least like there's like, oh, this is something that actually helps me with a problem I'm trying to solve.
Yeah, for sure. The amount of so I just got like a new camera, and so like the amount of like research that I did once, like even after, so like I did like a huge amount of research deciding what new camera to get, and then as soon as I landed on the camera that I was going to get, then I'm doing all kinds of research just on that camera. And now like every single time I'm opening it up, like I even got like I get like notifications from YouTube, and it'll just be like like the new FX3 like, and it'll show like
oh no, now I'm gonna get a bunch of camera advertising because just listening. I don't need new. I'm good on cameras. I don't.
Jeff wants a new camera. Jeff wants a new camera. FX3 Sony right to his brain this time. But yeah, no, it's like it's really. I mean, it can be cool, but it's also like it's really good because now there are creators that there's some creators that I watch their videos because of like entertainment. So like there's like some short film creators, and this is also something like that I'm taking notes on. They're like short film creators, and I was watching pretty much like different playlists of these short films, but then they also redirected me to these same creators, but they actually had like completely different content where they were talking about their camera setups, and they were talking about their loadouts, and they were talking about like their equipment, and I'm like, oh, like same creator, just a different dimension of their work. And so like having, multiple, and I wouldn't say like do too many different things, but like they're like a short film creator who also talks about their equipment. It's like that's like hand in hand.
So I think that also gets into the type of content that you're creating to expand your reach. So like there's different concepts. Like there's a concept called like evergreen, which is basically content that you create, like a video, maybe it's a poem you're reading, or like a discussion, an interview you have, where basically you can expect that is going to get views today. It's going to get views 5 years from now. It's going to get views 10 years from now, because it's content that people are always going to have some interest in.
Yeah.
The downside of evergreen generally is that there's usually no like big burst, because it's just like it kind of just like trickles in consistently. It's very predictable. Another form of content that you may want to be thinking about to expand your reach is some things that are trending. So every now and then, like you'll see like TikTok challenges that are popular. Maybe there's something happening in the news, like big events, like award ceremonies, like Oscars, Grammys, kind of stuff, and like kind of tying in whatever content or whatever industry you're in to that. So for instance, like, if an artist wins a Grammy, making a video or a poem or something about that, like maybe you make an erasure of like the lyrics to a popular song or something like that.
Yeah.
So like that is something that, let's be honest, like next year, 2-3 years from now, people probably aren't going to be looking up that song anymore, as much.
Yeah.
So you're just trying to capture the moment. So another type of video would be how-to videos, so like instructional. So for instance, you mentioned like people doing like short film, and then maybe people talking about, oh, this is how I got that shot from the short film. So you could talk about like the techniques and things like that, like how to use a fisheye lens, how to do this, how to do that. So again, you're relying on search traffic, so people looking up things, and then they find you that way too. So I think when you're creating and thinking about reach, having those sorts of, again, a term I referenced before is like buckets. So it's like I make this bucket, I have this bucket, I have this bucket. This is my how-to, this is my evergreen, this is my trending, this is my, as it may be. And then kind of shuffling between those. Maybe there's one that you're particularly focused on, but then every now and then also trying to highlight those others as well. And that can, again, we're talking long-term strategy. That is another way to kind of extend your reach a little bit, because you get the people who are looking for like the hottest thing, and then you get the people who are actually trying to focus on a specific area of need.
Yeah, and then like people that will fall in love with your content are coming from any one of those buckets, right? So it's like you might have somebody who finds you one way, and then they're like really, because again that level of discovery, especially whenever you find somebody new, it's like you have that initial video or the initial couple videos that you're like, man, I really rock with this, and then as you're depending on how long that you've been doing that work, right? Because we talked about, you're not starting the work right now thinking that 3 videos down the line you're million subscribers. You're probably talking about hundreds, a lot of times thousands upon thousands of videos down the line. Then like you're at that like high number of subscribers, like hopefully, right? And so by the time you get to somebody that's like brand new, it's not just about like, okay, they saw this video and they really like this video. It's like how much can they really explore within your channel? So like now they're like, I'm here for this video, but I have thousands of videos and resources, and now I trust this creator. So if I trust this creator, then that means like, oh, how do I, like if they're doing like kind of like maybe like the film space, how do I set up my new gear, like, or like where's the best place to start selling gear, like just like, and again, like this is you thinking about like, okay, well, I haven't actually kind of built up a channel yet, but I'm creating things that hopefully are useful to somebody right now. But then like what I'm also thinking about is 3-4 years down the line, somebody just now finds my channel and they're like, maybe they find your channel because they searched up like, hey, how do I offload equipment? And then your stuff comes up, because that's what's been happening with me. Like, a lot of the FX3 I think came out like 2 or 3 years ago, right? So by the time that I'm researching and I'm doing some real investigation on getting the camera or what I want to, or even some of the other elements with the camera. It's like I'm pulling up videos from creators who started like as soon as it came out. They're like, I just got that, like, but this is years ago. So yeah, it's just, you know, you're creating for the right now, but you're also creating for, like, you know, again, the potential both subscribers and general interest in views and all that other stuff in the future.
So I think we touched on, in terms of reach and establishing reach, just some things to think about in terms of, like, especially like social media content. Some other things that you may want to consider if you're like, okay, I have a book coming out, I want to reach more people. What else can I do besides like the social media? This is where establishing relationships with people is really helpful. You see a lot of people, what they do, like, even think of like a journal, like publications. A lot of times journals are taking poems from what they call the slush pile, so just people sending them in submissions unsolicited. But then a lot of times journals are also doing solicitations, so they're like, all right, we're going to do, you know, 80 poems from our slush pile, but then we're going to do 10 poems from a poet that we reach out to. Why are they reaching out to the poet?
They do 10 poems from the poet that they reach out to.
But why am I reaching out to a specific poet?
Like, maybe that poet has either work that resembles like what they're looking for, or more specifically, they have a reach.
Yeah, the name recognition. So it's like, you know, I'm gonna do, you know, 80 poems from, I hate to call it like no name poets, and then we're gonna get 10 poems from, you know, these two very well known poets. Yeah. Maybe including like the poet laureate and stuff like that. You know, and it's a draw. It's a draw. It's the reason, for instance, if you have a book launch, maybe you're like, all right, I have a book, I want to organize a launch. You bring in headliners, you know, like you bring in, okay, who are big poets in my area? Do I have a relationship with them? For instance, I can either pay them, maybe I already have a relationship with them, bring them in. It's still a reason, like, you see like endorsements on like advertisements and stuff like that, you know. It's another way to just get people aware of your work. For sure. So big name people, I think doing events can be really helpful as well, just in general. Yeah. To start building out, like, for instance, if I know that I have a book that's going to come out in a year, I'm starting to get involved with events today, if not yesterday. Yeah. Because we got to start pushing immediately.
And then naturally, hopefully, your involvement with community is fairly organic. So it's like, you know, hopefully you're not like, I'm not a poet at all right now, and I'm not going out and doing poems, but I saw, you know, a video on Button Poetry or something like that, and you're like, man, I want to really do that, and then that's when you start going out to poetry communities. So like, but like, again, I even think about, so tonight we're going to I'm going to a poetry event for like an artist that is like in the city, really, really great. I mean, he's been on this platform, I think. Zach Cannon and Sue Flat. But he had the feature across the board. Actually over there, but that's directions, right? But Zach is like a really, really great poet, but it's like he's also someone who's been in the community for years. But then also, like, some of the marketing around it has been like he goes to open mics and he's just like talking about his work, or, you know, he's like pushing himself a little bit more on social media nowadays, which I really love to see, like him and Sue Flat. And again, these are people that also, the kind of marketing that they're doing for it is, I think it's cool, because it's like, it's very genuinely them. You know what I mean? Like, you could tell somebody didn't get in their ear and say, well, you actually got to do this and have all these fans. Like, no, this is how they organize themselves. Like, this is how you kind of see them in real life. This is how they show up. And then, like, this is kind of their marketing. And I'm really excited to see, like, you know, naturally, I think they're going to get an amazing response. But yeah, no, I think that, you know, having somebody like that where you can be like, well, hold on, I'm going to go out to these events that I always go out to and talk about my work, and I'm going to make sure that I'm talking to, oh my God, like the amount of, like, I think we talk about this a lot, but like the amount of people that are like, yeah, I have a book that I just have a whole bunch of them at home. I'm like, but we're at a poetry show, right? Like we are here at a poetry show. Okay, like, can you imagine if like somebody that was like, I sell Girl Scout cookies, but you know, I got 20 boxes of Girl Scout cookies, but I just don't go around with them. I just kind of keep them at the house. For it's like no, like if you have product, bring your product, and if not, make sure you're always talking about like you're the guy who sells your book.
Yeah. And something that we reference a lot too, it's not just that you have to be, I'll rephrase, it's not just that you're the one talking about your work. Other people need to be talking about what you're doing too. Because if you're the only one doing it, it's just not gonna grow because you're not big enough. There have to be other people that are also talking about what you're doing to other people, especially when you're not there. And that's kind of the thing that we need to be focusing on. We reference a lot the concept of being remarkable. What about what you're doing is remarkable that would cause people to comment about it to others? Like, we need to be really moving in that direction. A lot of that can be when you involve other people. You know, how can you help instead of just thinking about your book, how can you help your friends who already have books? How can you help them get their own books out to more people? You know, like it really comes 100%. Back to that kind of community involvement. How are you helping your people move closer to their goals? How can your own art maybe help them do that as well? And that's, the more you're able to do that, again, the more people you're going to be able to reach. Reach really comes down to how many people are you impacting. And the reality is that most posts just aren't impacting a large enough amount of people to sustain themselves.
100%.
And that's the business flaw. You know, like, it's not that, the problem isn't the poetry. The problem is you're just not enough people know that.
Yeah.
It's what you're doing.
A lot of times people are focusing too hard on making like customers or making a buyer out of like the people that are in their immediate circle. You know what I mean? Which is, it's going to be very rare. Like, I don't know who said the quote, but it was just like your friends and family aren't gonna make you wealthy. Like, you know, strangers will make you wealthy. And I think about that, like, so, but like, what does that mean? It means that I have to be reaching people that I don't have a personal connection with, you know what I mean, that I haven't sat down and ate with or haven't joked around with, and I don't have their personal phone numbers that we reach. Those people are the people that are gonna be able to magnify your work for a lot of different reasons, but primarily, and in my opinion, is because they are pushing your work without the incentive of this personal connection. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, if my mom comes in here and says, "Oh, Matt's book is the best," it's like, what is that? You know what I mean? Like, of course you're gonna say that. But if some random stranger is like, "Hey, have you heard about like that Matt guy? I really like this book." I'm like, that's much more valuable to my business than, you know, some, like, one of these people in these close proximity. So it's like, this idea of impact, it also, you know, it carries with it that we're talking about impact absent of personal interpersonal connection. You know what I mean? Impact when it comes to what I'm doing, what my mission is, what I'm doing in the community, what I'm doing in the world. What kind of attention is that bringing?
I mean, and that's where social media really comes in, because social media gives you that easiest access to people you don't know. Whereas in your own communities, most likely you already know people in your communities a lot, and it's constantly growing, but social media allows you to expand that at a much faster rate. You know, for instance, for the teaching channels, you know, of those like 30,000 people, I know personally, I don't know, maybe 100, maybe it's probably less than that, right?
Yeah.
Versus like 30,000, right? The thing with like Diverses is right now where we're at, as of this date today, there's too many people that know me that know the channel. Like, we need to keep pushing to reach more people that don't know me personally. You know.
Although I mean, one of the things I think that happens to a degree, which is also kind of cool, is that you see people. One of my cousins, they live in Dayton. They were talking about, like, they were scrolling through because they do poetry and stuff like that. I think I told you about this like not that long ago, but they were kind of scrolling through because they do they do poetry. Well, actually, she's from Dayton, but she actually lives in Texas. But she was scrolling through, and she was just like, "Yo, like I was trying to like figure out like poetry stuff, and like to kind of do some poetry stuff, and like I saw your face, and I'm just like, where's that? I'm like, oh yeah, you're talking about like diverses, and I think it's, and I don't know what her searches were or anything like that, but I think it's kind of cool because again, this is, but it's like and I want to be clear, like Mark Zuckerberg probably knows I'm related to her somehow, you know what I'm saying? But like as far as what got her there wasn't me, you know what I mean? Like what got her there was just searching for poetry stuff and whatever. Which is all just to say that like I think that there's like a degree of that naturally already happening. Naturally, you'd always want it to be more. You'd always like I think one of the cool things that happens. One of the better things that happens, like again for really any social medias and your channels and all that other stuff, is that somebody that comes across your page, just kind of out of like, oh, like I didn't know that you made this, I didn't know this person made this, or like there's something like this out there in the world, and then they become somebody that regularly and consistently visits and comments and all that other stuff out of interest.
Yeah, I remember at Cave, another strategy to kind of consider. We were talking to poet Ramika, who's a cousin of Ariana, who's been on the Ariana's been on the channel a couple times. She actually won another award. So I was like, now we got to do another interview because every time she was, that's why. But one of the things that Ramika did was she just interviewed poets and then compiled those interviews, like big name poets, and then compiled the interviews into a book. And that's something that helped launch her own career, so she's able to get insights from other writers that people know about. She compiles it, so she's able to contribute something to the literary community because she's like, I've taken this wisdom from other writers and I've put it together into a single collection for you, other writers, to consider, so that's another thing. So really trying to consider how can you be a resource for people. That's another way I think is really big for reach. Being involved, for instance, like in Facebook groups, like getting involved and getting to know, like for instance, the administrators or things like that, like maybe doing an interview with like the admin team from like 4 or 5 different poetry Facebook groups, or discords or whatever it may be, because then like you're helping the admins too, because how often are they getting communicated to about opportunities to talk about their own views on art and share what they've learned, so you're giving them a platform, you're giving them yourself a platform, so you're able to kind of again start something that helps everyone kind of build together.
Yeah.
Which again gets back to the central idea that if you're trying to expand your reach, it comes a lot down to the relationships you're establishing.
100%.
I think the big thing is, and not something we talked about, but asking yourself, how can I make it that if someone mentions my name or what I'm doing, it raises other people's esteem of themselves. So like if you talk about me, that makes you quote unquote like look better. Like
you
how
can
I
if you bring me up in some space, especially if it's a space adjacent to like the field that you're in, it's like, oh yeah, have you heard of this? Have you heard of Jeff? Have you heard of Diversus or something like that? Like somebody's like, you know about that? That's really cool.
Or it's like, oh, you don't? Oh wow, I need to tell. Like, how can you again how can you get people to raise their esteem just by mentioning you? Because that sense of that like social need is really, but we're social creatures. We pay attention to stuff like that. That's something that kind of you want to be considering as you're putting things out into the world and your art into your world.
100%.
Yeah. Any kind of final thoughts just on reach? Things we need to be considering?
No.
I hope, we dropped some ideas on different strategies you can take, but I think the biggest takeaway is that we really need to be thinking about, if I'm trying to reach more people, most likely the problem is I'm not reaching enough people. And if we think that, 100 people is enough or 1,000 people is enough, the honest answer is it's not. This is a numbers game. It's a volume game. And most likely, if we go back to that one poet's goal of like, hey, I want to make $60,000 a year on poetry. Well, that means that in orders of magnitude, you're going to be having to reach hundreds of thousands, if not, a million people, which sounds crazy, but in reality, it's actually not.
Yeah.
that it's a lot of people, but it's not that many people. One of the things we talked about over the weekend is that when we had our opening ceremony, with the teaching channels I do, in the last 28 days, 2 channels reached. They didn't reach 700,000 people, but they got 700,000 impressions. So people seeing my content showed up on people's screens, 700,000 times over 28
Yeah.
days. So these numbers are a lot, but they're not a lot if you're willing to take the time to build it.
For sure.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Be sure to, again, check out the whole playlist, Arts and Offers, which give you more advice on taking your craft, your art, and figuring out, like, hey, I want to make a business around, I want to make a career about it. It's possible. You can do it.
Heck yeah.
Once more, my name is Jeff.
I'm Matthias.
We'll see you guys later. Hope you guys have a good day, have a good night, and a good